From a man who spent over 20 years hiding inside a police station, walking past the same detectives who were supposed to catch him, to a man who spent years in the Royal Marines, the SAS, and CIA Black Ops, killing people in places most people have never heard of, just to come home and start a war against beings who can throw cars. Two different men, completely different worlds, but the same obsession, doing something terrible, alone, without getting caught, for a reason they have convinced themselves is right. This comparison is purely hypothetical and pits two fictional characters against each other for analytical purposes only. One of them is Dexter Morgan, blood spatter analyst, Miami Metro homicide, 44 confirmed blood slides at his peak, taken at season 7, the most dangerous version of him before everything fell apart. The other is Billy Butcher, Royal Marine, SAS, CIA Black Ops, before any Compound V, before V24, pure human Butcher, and is most dangerous as just a man. The deeper you break this matchup down, the less even it starts to look. Dexter's intelligence was built around hiding inside a system and controlling what people around him could see. Butcher's intelligence was built around breaking systems that were actively designed to stop him. Dexter worked as Miami Metro's only blood spatter analyst for close to 12 years before season 1 even started. He chose that job deliberately. Sitting inside the homicide unit let him track what evidence was being processed, which cases were getting hot, and when anything pointed back at him. When FBI Special Agent Frank Lundy arrived in Season 2 to lead the Bay Harbor Butcher Task Force, he figured out the killer had law enforcement access, and the trail eventually led towards Coral Cove Marina, where Dexter kept his boat, Slice of Life. Dexter survived by wiping marina security footage, breaking the air conditioning in the field morgue so recovered bodies would break down before more evidence could be pulled, and slowly pushing suspicion onto Sergeant James Dokes. Every move was about buying time and shaping what the next person walking into the case would find. He studied routine, patterns, and weaknesses in his victims, and his colleagues, and in the investigations building around him. Now, bring in Butcher. After the Royal Marines, he moved into the SAS, the Special Air Service, one of the most respected special force units in the world. From there, CIA Black Ops with Agent Joe Kessler, running missions in Afghanistan's Panjshir Valley and interrogation operations at Guantanamo Bay. Homelander himself described Butcher as very smart. Butcher ran his own kind of intelligence operation, planning bugs, sending untraceable messages, running information through former contacts like Higgins and Esquerra just to find one address. When he needed inside the Seven's Tower, he did not break a window. He used Huey's anger at A-Train to make Huey want to do it himself. Butcher studied system, pressure points, and survival under active threat in hostile environments against people who were already looking for him. Dexter's intelligence works when people around him have less information than he does. He outthought Dokes, Lundy, and LaGuerta because none of them could fully picture what they were actually looking at. Butcher's intelligence works in situations designed to kill him, against people who already know he is coming. Those are different categories of the same skill. This category favors Butcher. Dexter's mind is exceptional inside a police department. Butcher's was built for high-risk field operation. If this kind of deep breakdown is what you came for, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because we go further on these comparisons than most channels ever try to. This is only one start at the gap though. The mind is one piece. What actually happens when both men are standing in the same space with the same goal shifts things further. Dexter is physically capable. Butcher without Compound V is operating at a noticeably higher level physically, and the gap matters from the first moment they're in the same space. Dexter was not weak. Dokes, himself a former Army Ranger, noticed immediately that Dexter had studied advanced jiu-jitsu in college and held a black belt. Dokes also found it strange that someone that capable had settled for a lab job, which tells you something about how Dexter read even to train people around him. Dexter used tranquilizer injection, usually M99, an animal tranquilizer called etterphine hydrochloride, to drop targets before they could resist. He preferred control over a straight fight. When he did fight without the needle, like his confrontation with Jordan Chase in Season 5, he won, but not cleanly. He also continued functioning through a gunshot wound to the leg and a broken hand in separate moments across the series. His physical ability was real, but the whole system was designed around avoiding a direct fight until the other person was already unconscious. Butcher's baseline without any Compound V was something built over decades of violent field experience. Royal Marines, SAS, and training under Colonel Grace Mallory. He strangled a fellow SAS veteran named Jock to death with his bare hand. He beat Mesmer's skull into a wash basin in Season 1. He took translucent an actual superhero with carbon metamaterial skin, and held his own long enough to spit his own blood on him so that he could see where to hit next. The Boys Wiki describes his condition as peak human, strong enough to compete with and sometimes beat low-level supes in direct contact. Dexter's fighting ability was a backup plan. The needle came first, always. If it failed or if he was caught off guard, he could handle himself, but the system was never built for a fair fight with someone ready for him. Butcher's whole background, the Marines, the SAS, the missions, was built around exactly that kind of fight. He walked into situations where someone knew he was coming and walked out anyway. This is where Dexter's system starts running into real problems. Dexter's physical skill was supporting gear. For Butcher, it was the main event. So, if intelligence and physical ability both lean in one direction, the question becomes whether Dexter's actual method, the thing that kept him running for over 20 years, can work at all against someone like Butcher. What made Dexter dangerous was never just the needle itself, it was the patience behind it. But against Butcher, that opening becomes dramatically harder to establish from the very first step. The process was largely the same across the entire Dexter franchise. Approach from behind, inject with a fast-acting sedative, M99 in the earlier seasons, with later references shifting towards ketamine and New Blood, before the target knows anything had happened. Wake up restrained to a plastic-covered table, small blood sample taken from each cheek as a record. His first blood slide box held 45 slides. His second held 43 before Dexter burned it himself in Season 7. Bodies dismembered, packed into black trash bags, dropped into the Gulf Stream from Slice of Life. The system worked because his targets never saw Step 1 coming, and because Dexter was willing to wait as long as it took for the right moment. That patience is what separated him from every other killer on the show. Butcher spent years working against Vought, a company with private security and actual supes actively trying to find and stop him. His survival during that time came down to situational awareness and being extremely difficult to approach without him noticing. The Boys Wiki lists Stealth Mastery as one of his confirmed abilities, and the show backs it up. He walked into Madeline Stillwell's own house without being detected. He got inside the gated community where Becca was being kept the same way. Someone shaped by years of Black Ops work, where being approached from behind meant dying, is not a clean injection target. Dexter's clean ambush window, the one that has worked on armed people, trained killers, and paranoid targets before, becomes far less reliable the moment the target has that kind of training in their background. The method was Dexter's great equalizer. It removed the physical problem entirely. It did not matter how big or how trained the target was if they were already unconscious. But the method required a gap in the target's awareness, and it required patience to find the right moment. Butcher's awareness was trained specifically to close that gap. Dexter does have enough patience to wait for an imperfect moment to become usable, but the window against Butcher is narrower than almost any target he has faced, and if that window closes, his biggest tool goes with it. The matchup noticeably shifts here. Dexter does not lose his method entirely, but the sedation setup becomes harder to establish against this specific opponent than almost any other. Now, here's where it gets interesting though. Both of these men have a history of letting their feelings blow up their plans at exactly the wrong moment. And in a fight this tight, whoever loses that battle first hands the other man a window he will not waste. Dexter's emotions broke his code more than once. Butcher's emotions pushed him just as far and just as fast. Neither man has clean hands in this round. The code has two main rules: do not get caught, and only kill people who are confirmed killers. Dexter broke the second one repeatedly. In Season 3, he killed Oscar Prado in a struggle before confirming Oscar was actually a killer. In Season 4, he killed photographer Jonathan Farrow before verifying the man was guilty. In Season 5, weeks after Rita's murder, he killed a man named Benny Gomez in a gym bathroom out of pure rage. Gomez was not a target, not confirmed, just in the wrong place at the wrong moment. In New Blood, he killed Sergeant Logan, a good man not guilty of anything, just to escape custody. And then there was Hannah McKay. He had her on the table, fully restrained. He could not finish it. He fell for her instead. Butcher's emotional record is just as messy. He abandoned CIA colleague Joe Kessler to die in Afghanistan's Panjshir Valley in 2013, something he could never fully explain, and it followed him in the form of hallucinations for the rest of the series. His hatred of supes became so total that he was willing to release a virus that would kill not just Homelander, but every person on Earth with any compound V in their body, including Ryan, his own surrogate son, and teammates like Annie and Kimiko. Becca told him early on that he was always one bad day away from pounding someone to death in a parking lot. The difference is that Butcher's emotional breaks can become catastrophically reckless just as quickly as Dexter's can become impulsive. His aggression also creates blind spot. He survives through pressure and momentum, but that same mentality can make him careless in ways a patient opponent can use. Both men let emotion override judgment at the worst time. What separates them is what the emotion cost them in the moment. When Dexter breaks from emotion, he kills the wrong person, fails to kill the right one, or gives someone else a piece of the puzzle they needed. When Butcher breaks, the consequences are bigger and faster, but his hesitation in the moment is rare. Against each other, the question is who cracks first under pressure. Dexter's breakpoints usually need someone he loves close by. Butcher needs someone he hates in front of him, so narrow edge to Butcher. His emotional decisions can turn reckless, but they almost never make him hesitate when the target is standing right there. Dexter's can and have. What is one moment from either show where you think the outcome changes completely if the other man is involved? Drop it in the comments. These are calls that can go either way. The emotional piece connects directly to the next problem, because what Butcher does when he decides someone needs to go is very different from what Dexter's code allows him to do. Dexter's code kept him alive for over 20 years. Against Butcher, that same code becomes a delay he cannot afford. Harry Morgan built the code for one purpose: keep Dexter alive and out of prison by making him careful, methodical, and specific. Every target had to be confirmed. Evidence had to be solid. The kill room could not happen until Dexter was certain. That discipline kept him running inside Miami Metro for over 2 decades without being caught, but it also built a hard stop into how he responded to threats. LaGuerta got close in season 7, not just because she was sharp, but because Dexter had to be slow and careful about how he answered her. He could not make her disappear the moment she became a problem. He needed a justification he could live with first. He had to build a case on her in his own head, and while he was doing that, she kept getting closer. Time is exactly what a person with no rules can use against someone who has them. Butcher does not carry those restrictions. When Mesmer could identify the boys in Vought in season 1, there was no checklist. Butcher beat his skull into a wash basin and walked out. His standard for action is whether the person in front of him needs to stop being a problem. Full stop. That is the faster decision by definition. And in a situation where both men know the other is hunting them, the one who decides faster moves first. The code made Dexter safer over 2 decades because it stopped him from making sloppy emotional mistakes that would get him caught. Against a target who does not know what he is, that slowness cost him nothing. Against Butcher, who does not need to confirm anything and does not hesitate once he decides, the code becomes a gap in Dexter's response time. Every moment Dexter is building his case, Butcher is already moving. This is one of Butcher's strongest advantages. Rules help Dexter against people who do not know what he is. Against someone who already knows and does not have rules, the code becomes a chain. There is one area left where Dexter has always had a real edge over everyone around him: the ability to make the world see exactly what he wants it to see. The question is whether that skill means anything at all when the other man spent years doing the same thing in places where getting it wrong meant not coming home. Dexter's cover was exceptional. 20 years inside a police department is not an accident, but Butcher's version of staying hidden was built for a completely different kind of pressure, and that difference matters here. Harry started building Dexter's cover early. Blood spatter analyst by day, quiet neighbor at night, donuts to the office, small talk he practiced in his head before saying it out loud, a relationship with Rita that partly served as a social shield. Dokes never bought it, and eventually paid for that with his life in season 2. LaGuerta rebuilt the case from a single blood slide and almost made it all the way to the truth before season 7 ended. In New Blood, Dexter ran a new identity. Jim Lindsay, in Iron Lake, New York, worked at a fishing store, dated the local police chief. He went nearly 10 years without killing. Even then, the cover cracked through small things building up: needle marks on a body, gaps in the Jim Lindsay identity, a connection back to the Bay Harbor Butcher case through Captain Bautista. Dexter's cover worked partly because the people around him wanted to believe it, but also because he consistently shaped what they saw. He engineered that perception every single day. Butcher's approach to staying hidden was different. He did not need to seem like a normal person. He needed to make himself hard to track and harder to corner. He used former military contacts to stay off official radar. He walked into Madeline Stillwell's own house without being detected. He lived as a wanted man after being suspected of her murder and still managed to gather intelligence and run the boys from hiding. His cover was not a personality he put on. It was a field discipline, built on the assumption that someone is always looking and acting accordingly. Dexter's cover is a masterpiece in the right environment. Against people who are already primed to see him as a colleague, works almost perfectly, but it was designed for passive management, keeping people from looking too hard. Butcher's operational security was built for active evasion, staying functional when people are already looking. Against each other directly, neither cover helps fool the other man, but Butcher's version, designed around the assumption that he is always being hunted, is more useful when both people know the game is already on. So it's a draw, leaning slightly towards Butcher. Dexter's cover is stronger in a normal setting. Butcher's is better suited to the kind of setting this fight actually takes place in. Dexter Morgan is one of the most carefully built fictional killers ever put on a screen. 20 plus years hidden inside a police department, getting past federal investigators, surviving every close call that should have ended him. He is not a pushover, but Billy Butcher, without a single drop of Compound V, is a problem of a different kind. Royal Marine, SAS, CIA Black Ops, a man who was already going up against powered beings before he had any powers of his own, using nothing but training, patience, and a refusal to stop that borders on irrational. Dexter's entire system rests on a gap in what his targets know, a gap in how fast they react, a gap in their awareness. Butcher spent his career working in environments where closing those exact gaps was the difference between coming home and not. The needle does not land cleanly on someone trained to feel when a room changes. The code slows down a man whose opponent has none. The forensic intelligence that kept Dexter ahead of detectives and investigators does not translate to a fight against someone trained for high-risk field conditions where the rules of that environment simply do not apply. Most outcomes here favor Butcher, and once you break the matchup down category by category, the advantages start stacking heavily in his direction. Dexter does not lose because he's not brilliant. He is. He loses because everything he built was designed for a world that Billy Butcher has spent his entire career operating outside of. Butcher has spent years dealing with threats that required constant suspicion, aggression, and immediate action. That kind of experience directly pressures the weakest part of Dexter's system. If this breakdown changed how you see either of these characters, subscribe. Hit the bell because the next matchup goes even deeper into what happens when two completely different kinds of dangerous collide.